The morning sun hadn't fully crested the Blacksite perimeter when Major Vance's voice cut through the gear inspection yard like a blade through silk. Contractors use the side entrance. This formation is for people who actually earned their clearance. Lieutenant Kira Voss stood at the main gate, identification badge extended, while 15 personnel in tactical fatigues turned to watch. The metal detector beeped its approval. The guard waved her through. But Vance stepped into her path, his shadow falling across the concrete like a verdict already written. She didn't flinch, didn't speak, just held the badge steady while he examined it with the kind of theatrical skepticism that plays well to an audience. Behind him, Specialist Torres whispered something to the woman beside her. Both laughed. The sound carried across the yard with perfect acoustics, designed to be heard. Vance handed back the badge. "Equipment prep is over there. Gear lockers need wiping down before inspection." He gestured toward a row of steel cabinets streaked with dust from yesterday's wind. "Think you can handle that? Or should I get you a tutorial?" Kira took the badge, walked toward the lockers. No argument, no visible emotion. She picked up the cleaning rag someone had left draped over a toolbox and began methodically working down the first cabinet. The metal was hot under the climbing sun. Sweat formed at her hairline within 30 seconds. Torres moved closer, boots crunching on gravel. "Check out the discount dragon ink peeking out. Tourist trap special, right? Probably got it on spring break." Her voice carried that specific volume people use when they want everyone to hear but maintain deniability. The kind that lets them say later, "I was just making conversation." The edge of Kira's tattoo showed where her collar didn't quite meet her neck. Just the hint of scaled artwork, black and gray shading visible against skin still tan from deployments nobody here knew about. She adjusted her grip on the rag, kept wiping. Her breathing fell into a pattern. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Combat breathing, the kind that keeps your heart rate steady when someone's trying to provoke a reaction worth documenting. Sergeant Major Pruitt stood near the ammunition checkpoint, clipboard in hand, supposedly reviewing overnight logs. But his eyes kept drifting toward the woman cleaning lockers with the kind of precise, economical movements that don't come from civilian life. When she shifted the rag to her other hand, he noticed the grip, thumb reinforcing, fingers positioned for retention even on something as mundane as terry cloth. That's a trained hold. Muscle memory doesn't lie. Something small and metallic hit the concrete with a clear ping. A challenge coin, dark metal with worn edges, rolled 3 feet before settling near a drainage grate. Torres saw it first, picked it up, turned it over in her palm. "What's this? Good luck charm from a vending machine?" She tossed it toward the grate. It bounced once, came to rest facing up. Pruitt's jaw tightened. He couldn't see details from this distance, but he'd carried enough challenge coins in his career to recognize weight, diameter, the way certain metals age. That wasn't stamped zinc from a gift shop. That was custom minting, maybe military contract work. Definitely not available to civilians. Captain Garrett emerged from the operations building, tablet under one arm, already talking before he'd cleared the doorway. "All right, who authorized a paper engineer for Tier 1 systems?" He stopped beside Vance, making sure his voice projected across the formation. "Because last I checked, defense grid inspection requires active security clearance, not a contractor badge that could have come from anywhere." Kira finished the 3rd locker, moved to the 4th. The rag was filthy now, leaving faint streaks instead of cleaning. Nobody offered her a fresh one. That was the point. Garrett scrolled through his tablet with exaggerated attention. "Let me see here. Access logs show standard civilian credentials. No special operations background. No field certifications. Nothing that explains why Central Command thought you could handle Blacksite infrastructure." He looked up. "Want to clarify your qualifications, or should we just call this a clerical error and send you home?" She set down the rag, straightened, met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to acknowledge the question, not long enough to seem challenging. "Lieutenant Kira Voss, Military Engineering Corps, assigned by General Carver for systems audit." Her voice was quiet, steady, completely neutral. "Systems audit." Garrett repeated the words like they tasted wrong. "How convenient. Show up unannounced, no advance coordination, and expect access to our most sensitive infrastructure during a period when we're already under scrutiny." He tapped the tablet screen. "Funny thing about timing," Vance picked up the thread. "Colonel Hayes mentioned yesterday that we're overdue for a security review, then you appear, almost like someone's trying to manufacture problems they can solve later." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Build a career on other people's vulnerabilities. The insinuation hung in the air like cordite. Around the yard, conversation stopped. This wasn't banter anymore. This was accusation with witnesses. Kira returned to the lockers, picked up the rag, started on cabinet 5. Her left hand moved to adjust something at her wrist, a wrap of gauze barely visible under her sleeve cuff. The motion was automatic, checking security of a dressing nobody else could see. Pruitt caught it. His expression shifted slightly. That's a wound covering. Fresh enough to need monitoring, old enough that she's used to adjusting it without thinking. Torres had her phone out now, angled low but obvious, taking photos, the kind that would circulate through group chats before lunch. New janitor has interesting body art, would probably be the caption. Maybe, looks like someone's overqualified for cleaning duty, with a string of laughing emojis. The post would spread through 3 different signal groups before noon, carrying her face and that visible edge of tattoo to people who'd form opinions without context. The morning stretched longer. Kira finished all 12 lockers while the formation conducted standard pre-duty briefing, weapons check, range safety review, assignment confirmation. She wasn't included in any of it. Wasn't acknowledged except as an obstacle people stepped around when moving between stations. When the formation broke, Tech Sergeant Lee passed close enough to murmur, "Restrooms in the south building if you need it." No eye contact, no pause, just information delivered in passing, quiet enough that it didn't register as help. She waited 5 minutes, then walked toward the south building, boots raising small dust clouds on the path. Inside, the restroom was empty, institutional white tile, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of industrial cleaner. She moved to the sink, ran cold water, let it pool in her cupped palms before pressing her hands to her face. The reflection in the mirror showed a woman who'd slept 4 hours in the past 48, dark circles carefully concealed with makeup that was already breaking down in the heat, hair pulled back in a regulation bun that hadn't been touched up since yesterday's departure briefing. Behind her eyes, something older than exhaustion, the kind of tired that comes from carrying weight nobody else can see. She unwrapped the gauze at her wrist. The scar underneath ran 4 inches along the inside of her forearm, a pink line still slightly raised, the kind that comes from shrapnel removal. Tissue had healed around metal fragments too small to extract safely. Every morning she checked for signs of infection, inflammation, anything that might require medical attention she couldn't seek without questions. This morning looked the same as yesterday, same as the day before, same as the 3 weeks since the doctors cleared her for light duty and sent her back into rotation. From her pocket, she retrieved the challenge coin Torres had dismissed, turned it slowly in her fingers. The surface was worn smooth in places where a thumb had rubbed over years of handling. On one side, an engraved dragon head, serpentine neck coiled into a defensive posture. On the other, text so small it required good light to read, Air 01, Dragonfall Continuum. Below that, a serial number worn almost illegible. Almost. She pressed the coin between her palms, closed her eyes, heard her father's voice from a memory 15 years old. Patient, not passive. There's a difference. One waits for the right moment. The other just accepts whatever comes. The restroom door opened. Kira pocketed the coin, wrapped fresh gauze, was washing her hands when Torres walked in. Their eyes met in the mirror for half a second before Torres moved to a stall without speaking. The silence felt deliberate, pointed. Kira dried her hands, left, walked back across the yard toward where Garrett was setting up for the morning briefing. He saw her coming and raised his voice mid-sentence. "Since we have unexpected company, let's review protocol. Tier 1 systems require active military clearance, verified chain of command authorization, and documented technical certification." He looked directly at her. Contractors who think a badge and a toolbox are sufficient don't understand how serious we take security here. She stopped 3 paces away, waited. "You're assigned to inspect the defense grid relay." Garrett pulled up a schematic on his tablet, turned it so she could see. "Standard inspection takes 90 minutes. You have 45. Think you can manage that, or should I request someone qualified?" The challenge was explicit now. 45 minutes for work that normally took twice that. Either she'd fail and prove their point, or she'd cut corners and give them ammunition for later criticism. Kira studied the schematic for 10 seconds. 45 minutes. Understood. Clock starts when you enter the relay building. Garrett checked his watch. "Which is now." She turned. walked toward the squat concrete structure housing the grid relay. Behind her, someone, probably Torres, said something too quiet to make out, followed by muffled laughter. She didn't turn around, just kept walking, counting steps, calculating routes, visualizing the work ahead with the kind of mental mapping that comes from doing similar tasks in worse conditions with less time. The relay building was locked. She swiped her contractor badge. The reader blinked red, denied. She tried again. Same result. Garrett appeared beside her holding a master key card. Oh, right. Contractors need escort for Tier 1 facilities. My mistake. He swiped his card. The lock clicked open. 43 minutes now. Better hurry. Inside, the relay room was exactly what she expected. Banks of servers, cable runs organized with military precision, environmental controls maintaining optimal temperature, backup power systems ready to kick in if primary failed. She moved immediately to the main junction, pulling diagnostic tools from the kit Lee had left by the door earlier. The work was familiar. More than familiar. She'd designed systems like this, trained on prototypes before they were deployed, could map the architecture in her sleep. Her hands moved with efficiency that looked casual but was actually the result of thousands of repetition hours, connecting diagnostic leads, checking voltage levels, tracing signal paths, documenting findings on her tablet. 15 minutes in, she'd identified 3 potential failure points and 2 redundancy gaps. 20 minutes, she had bypass solutions sketched. 25 minutes, full diagnostic report compiled with recommended fixes prioritized by severity. Pruitt had followed her in, ostensibly to observe, actually to watch her work. The way she moved around the equipment wasn't tentative, wasn't the careful navigation of someone unfamiliar with complex systems. She anticipated cable runs before seeing them, knew which panels opened which way without checking, reached for tools before looking, hand going to the right pocket every time. She pulled up the maintenance log on her tablet, cross-referencing against current system status. Her fingers flew across the screen, typing with the kind of speed that comes from muscle memory, and using shortcuts that weren't in civilian software. That's military interface, classified access syntax. How does a contractor know that? At 30 minutes, she was laying out repair sequence when her tablet logged her out. Access denied. She tapped the screen, tried to log back in. The system rejected her credentials. Authentication failure. Contact system administrator. Garrett leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Problem? Access was revoked. She kept her voice level. Huh. He made a show of checking his tablet. Looks like someone flagged your credentials for verification. Standard security protocol when there's questions about authorization. He shrugged. Can't complete the inspection without access to the documentation system. What a shame. And you had... He checked his watch. 12 minutes left. This was the sabotage Pruitt had warned would come. Not obvious enough to be provable. Just bureaucratic friction applied at the exact moment it would cause maximum disruption. If she complained, she'd look incompetent. If she failed, she'd prove their narrative. She stood. I'll need backup access. Sure, fill out a request form. Should process in 48 to 72 hours. Garrett's smile was professional, empty. Of course, General Carver expects your preliminary report by end of business today, so that might be tight. Pruitt cleared his throat. Backup terminal in the operations building has guest access, contractor level, but it might work for documentation review. Garrett's jaw tightened. That's for emergency use only. This is a time-sensitive systems inspection ordered by the base commander. Pruitt's tone was mild. His eyes weren't. Seems like emergency criteria applies. The 3 of them walked to the operations building in silence that felt like battlefield tension. Inside, the backup terminal sat in a corner office. Older model, but functional. Kira logged in with guest credentials. The system grudgingly accepted. She pulled up her draft report, began filling in technical specifications from memory, cross-referencing against public documentation she could access without higher clearance. 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 5. She submitted the report with 90 seconds to spare. Garrett read it on his tablet, expression souring with each paragraph. It was thorough, detailed, correct. Exactly what he'd hoped she couldn't deliver. This is preliminary, he said finally. We'll need to verify your findings. Of course. She powered down the terminal, stood. Anything else? Not right now. He didn't look up from the tablet. Dismissed. If you've ever been underestimated, hit like and subscribe. And if you believe patience wins wars, hit that thanks button. Let's see how silence becomes a weapon. She walked back outside. The sun was higher now, heat building toward midday intensity. Most of the formation had dispersed to assignments. Only a few people remained in the yard, including Torres and Vance, who were examining something on Torres's phone. Torres saw her first, turned the screen so Vance could see, said something that made him laugh. Then she looked directly at Kira and raised her voice. "Just posted to the group. You're getting famous. 53 reactions already." The phone screen showed a photo taken earlier. Kira wiping down lockers, the edge of her tattoo visible above her collar captioned with text Kira couldn't read from this distance but could imagine. The comments would be worse than the image, always were. She kept walking, found shade near the ammunition checkpoint, sat on a concrete barrier designed for vehicle control, pulled out her water bottle, drank slowly while her heart rate stayed exactly where she'd trained it to stay. 60 beats per minute, no elevation, no visible response. Pruitt approached from the direction of the motor pool, walking with the careful gait of someone whose knees had logged too many miles. He stopped 5 feet away, close enough for conversation, far enough to maintain professional distance. "You did good work in there, fast thinking with the backup terminal." She capped her water bottle. "Just following available options. Most contractors wouldn't know those options existed." He shifted weight, watching her with eyes that had seen 3 decades of military life. Or how to navigate classification protocols without explicit instruction. She met his gaze, didn't respond. He nodded slowly. "Your father was military?" "Yes." "What branch?" "Army, Special Operations." "That explains some things." Pruitt looked away, toward the perimeter fence where heat shimmer made the distance look liquid. "I knew a few operators back in the day. They had a way of moving, economy of motion. Nothing wasted. You've got that." Kira stood. "I should report to General Carver's office." "She's in a conference call until 1300 hours. Pruitt pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Updated schedule. You're expected at the biometric enrollment station at 1400. They'll need full authentication before granting system access." He handed her the paper. "Make sure you're not late. Colonel Hayes supervises those sessions personally." The name landed like a stone in still water. Hayes. The man who'd been conspicuously absent all morning despite being the senior officer on site. The man whose name appeared in too many margin notes in the classified files she'd reviewed before this assignment. The man her father had been investigating when Operation Dragonfall turned into an ambush that killed 8 operators and destroyed a network 5 years in the building. "Understood." She took the paper. Pruitt started to walk away, then paused. "One more thing. That coin you dropped earlier." He reached into his pocket, pulled out the challenge coin Torres had dismissed. "Found it near the drain. Thought you might want it back." He pressed it into her palm. His fingers were rough, scarred from decades of work. "I've seen coins like that exactly once before. Long time ago. Different context." He met her eyes. "Don't know what brought you here, but I know when someone's carrying weight that isn't visible on duty rosters." He left before she could respond. Kira looked down at the coin warming in her palm, slipped it back into her pocket, felt its weight settle against her thigh like a promise kept. The afternoon crawled toward 1400 hours. Kira spent the time reviewing public documentation on her tablet, building mental maps of the Blacksite layout, noting camera placements, guard rotation patterns, entry and exit points. Information that looked like casual observation but was actually tactical assessment, the kind of thing that becomes second nature when your training starts before you're old enough to drive. At 1345, she walked toward the biometric enrollment building. Torres passed her going the opposite direction, shoulder-checking deliberately as they crossed paths. "Watch where you're going, contractor." Kira steadied herself without comment, kept walking. Behind her, Torres called out, "Hey, did you get your dragon tattoo finished? Or did you run out of money halfway through?" More laughter. She didn't turn around. The biometric station was a small building attached to the operations center, climate-controlled to protect the enrollment equipment. Inside, Tech Sergeant Lee sat at a workstation running diagnostics. He looked up when she entered, nodded once, returned to his screen without speaking. At 1358, Colonel Hayes arrived. He was tall, gray-haired, carrying himself with the posture of someone who'd spent a career commanding respect through rank more than merit. His uniform was immaculate, his eyes were calculating. "Lieutenant Voss." He extended a hand. She shook it briefly. His grip was firm, testing, the kind meant to establish dominance through physical contest. She matched it without exceeding. He released first. "I understand you've had an eventful morning." Standard assignment, sir. Captain Garrett tells me you completed a 45-minute inspection that normally takes twice that. Hayes smiled. It looked practiced. Impressive, or suspicious, depending on perspective. She didn't respond. Biometric enrollment is straightforward, he continued. Fingerprints, retinal scan, voice authentication, full-body scan for weapon detection protocol, standard procedure for anyone accessing Tier 1 systems. He gestured toward the enrollment station. Should take 15 minutes, then you'll have complete access and we can all move forward. Kira approached the station. Lee had pulled up her profile on the screen. Name, rank, assignment details, clearance level showing contractor status with temporary Tier 1 authorization pending enrollment completion. Right hand first. Lee indicated the scanner. She placed her palm flat. The scanner hummed, green light tracking across her skin. Left hand. She switched hands. Same process. The machine beeped acceptance. Retinal scan. Lee adjusted the height of the optical reader. She leaned forward, positioning her eye at the indicated marker. Brief flash. Confirmation tone. Voice authentication. Lee pulled up a passphrase. Read this exactly as written. She read the 32-character string, letters and numbers designed to capture vocal patterns across different sound combinations. The system recorded, analyzed, beeped approval. Full body scan for weapons protocol. Lee gestured to the standing scanner, a frame with multiple sensors that would map her complete profile. Step inside, arms out, hold still. She moved into position. The scanner powered up. Lights began their sequential sweep from feet to head. Hayes watched from beside Lee's workstation, arms crossed, expression neutral. The scanner reached her shoulders, kept climbing, reached her neck where the collar of her uniform met skin, reached the edge of her tattoo. Lee's screen flickered. An error message appeared. Scan interrupted. Authentication failure. Hayes stepped closer. What's the problem? Not sure, sir. Lee ran diagnostics. System shows enrollment incomplete. Scanner stopped at the upper body sequence. Run it again. Lee reset the scanner. Step out and back in, please. Kira complied. The scanner initiated. Same sequence. Lights sweeping upward, reaching her shoulders. Error message. Authentication failure. Enrollment cannot complete. Hayes leaned over Lee's workstation. This equipment was certified yesterday. What changed? Lee pulled up system logs, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. His expression shifted, subtle tightening around the eyes. Sir, there's a modification timestamp. Someone accessed the scanner parameters at 0300 this morning. He highlighted the entry. Change the sensitivity threshold on the upper body sequence. Set it to reject if it detects certain ink composition. Ink composition? Hayes' voice was carefully neutral. Tattoo recognition protocol, sir. Military-grade biometric systems can identify specific ink types used in classified applications. Lee looked up. Whoever modified this specifically targeted those markers. The room went quiet. Kira stood beside the scanner, arms still out, while Hayes processed the implication. Someone on this base had sabotaged enrollment specifically to target her tattoo, which meant someone knew what kind of tattoo she had before she'd revealed enough of it for identification. Can you override it? Hayes asked. Not without administrator credentials. Lee checked the access log again. The modification was made using kernel-level authorization. Hayes' jaw tightened. My credentials? Yes, sir. Though the physical access point was Terminal 7 in the East Barracks, logged in remotely. I was off-site from 2200 yesterday until 0600 this morning. Hayes pulled out his phone, began scrolling through security logs. Someone cloned my access. What would you do? Reveal your hand or let them think you failed? Drop your strategy below. And don't forget to subscribe. Things are about to ignite. Kira lowered her arms. How long until the system can be restored? Lee ran calculations. Manual reset requires pulling the previous configuration from backup, verifying integrity, reinstalling with proper credentials, minimum 2 hours, maybe 3. I need authentication completed by 1600. Hayes was texting rapidly. General Carver's expecting the access grant before end of business. I can try emergency override, Lee offered, but it'll require General Carver's direct authorization code, and she's in a conference call until 15:30. Hayes finished the sentence, put away his phone, looked at Kira with an expression that had shifted from neutral to something harder to read. This is unfortunate timing. Unfortunate wasn't the word. This was surgical sabotage timed to maximum effect. make her look incompetent through access failure, generate official record of enrollment problems that would shadow her credentials, create paper trail showing she couldn't meet basic authentication requirements, and somewhere on this base, someone was watching to see how she'd respond. Garrett appeared in the doorway. "Colonel Hayes, we have a situation at the perimeter. North fence sensors triggered." Hayes turned. "What kind of trigger?" "Of motion detected. Could be wildlife. Could be reconnaissance." Garrett glanced at Kira. "Security protocols require all non-essential personnel to secure in designated areas until clearance." "Lieutenant Voss is essential personnel on assignment from General Carver," Hayes said. "With respect, sir, she doesn't have completed authentication." Garrett held up his tablet, showing her profile with the red pending status, which technically makes her unverified. The trap was closing. If she stayed, she was violating security protocol. If she left, she'd miss the narrow window for enrollment completion. Either way, she'd fail today's objectives. Hayes studied her face for 3 seconds, looking for reaction, testing for cracks. "Lieutenant, secure in the South Building briefing room. We'll resolve the perimeter situation and continue enrollment after clearance." She nodded, walked past Garrett without speaking, down the corridor, out into sunlight that felt aggressive after the climate-controlled building, across the yard toward the South Building, while behind her, rapid footsteps and radio chatter indicated mobilization. Torres intercepted her halfway across. "Heard you failed biometric. That's embarrassing. Maybe if you'd spent less money on bargain tattoos and more on actual qualifications." Kira walked past her, kept walking. Torres followed for 5 steps, still talking, then gave up when it became clear she wouldn't get a response. The South Building briefing room was empty. Rows of chairs facing a projection screen, water coolers in the corner, windows overlooking the motor pool. Kira chose a seat with sightlines to the door and windows. Sat down, pulled out her tablet, began documenting the morning's events in careful, neutral language that would support an official report if needed. 15 minutes passed. 20. Through the window, she watched personnel moving toward the north perimeter, saw vehicles rolling out, heard radio chatter leaking through an open door somewhere down the hall. 30 minutes. The perimeter alert was resolved. False alarm, confirmed wildlife, sensors reset. Personnel began returning to normal duties, but nobody came to retrieve her from the briefing room. 45 minutes. She pulled up the biometric enrollment schedule on her tablet. Her slot was marked incomplete, rescheduled. The new appointment time showed 72 hours from now, 3 days, long enough to make her miss every deadline General Carver had set, long enough to build a case that she couldn't perform under pressure. Through the window, she saw Hayes and Garrett walking toward the operations building, heads close in conversation. Saw Torres join them. The 3 disappeared inside. Whatever they were discussing, it didn't include finding a solution to get her authenticated today. Kira stood, walked to the water cooler, filled a paper cup, drank slowly while her mind cycled through options, contingencies, backup plans she'd developed during 3 months of preparation before accepting this assignment. The door opened. Pruitt stepped inside carrying 2 folders. "Thought you might want updated system documentation while you wait." He set the folders on the table beside her. Public access versions. Nothing classified, but comprehensive enough for preliminary analysis. She picked up the first folder, flipped it open. Standard technical specifications, the kind available through official channels. Second folder has historical maintenance logs, Pruitt continued. Public record stuff, but interesting if you know what patterns to look for. He moved toward the door, paused. "There's also a note in the back, from an old friend who thought you might benefit from context." After he left, Kira opened the second folder, flipped to the back, found a single sheet of paper, handwritten in precise capital letters. "Backup scanner in medical building. Older model, no recent modifications. Medical officer owes me a favor. 1,600 hours. Side entrance. Pruitt." She memorized the message, tore the paper into small pieces, dropped them in the recycle bin, checked her watch. 15:20. 40 minutes until the window opened. She spent the time reviewing maintenance logs, building timeline of system updates, noting discrepancies between official documentation and actual installation dates. The patterns Pruitt mentioned became visible after 10 minutes of analysis. Someone had been making unauthorized changes to security systems for at least 6 months, using valid credentials, but outside normal change control procedures. At 15:55, she left the briefing room. walked across the compound toward the medical building, taking an indirect route that avoided main pathways. The side entrance was marked staff only but unlocked. Inside, the corridor smelled like disinfectant and air conditioning. A medical officer, captain, insignia showing physician specialty, waited outside a door marked diagnostic imaging. She was mid-40s, gray streaking her dark hair, carrying herself with the competence of someone who'd seen enough to not be impressed by ranked games. "You're Lieutenant Voss." "Yes, ma'am." "Pruitt said you need backup biometric enrollment." She unlocked the door. "This scanner's 15 years old, hasn't been updated since installation, can't process latest protocols, but it'll get you baseline authentication good enough for temporary access pending proper enrollment." Inside, the equipment looked like museum pieces compared to the modern station, bulkier, slower, but functional. The medical officer powered up the scanner. "This'll take longer. Old processors, but it works." Kira stepped into position. The scanner hummed to life, grinding through its sequence. Fingerprints, retinal scan, voice authentication. Full body scan moving at glacial speed compared to the newer model. 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10. The scanner completed, beeped. The medical officer checked the output. "Got it. I can submit this to General Carver for temporary authorization. Should have approval within the hour." She ejected a data card, slipped it into an envelope, sealed it. "This stays off the main network until General Carver signs off. After that, you'll have baseline access. Not full Tier 1, but enough to work while they sort out the mess with the primary system." "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me." Pruitt called in a marker. She handed Kira the envelope. "Deliver this directly to General Carver's office. Nobody else touches it. Understand?" Kira took the envelope, left through the side entrance, crossed the compound toward the command building where General Carver's office occupied the second floor. The sun was dropping toward the western horizon, painting everything in orange light that made the Blacksite look almost peaceful. At the command building entrance, she swiped her contractor badge. The reader blinked red, denied. She tried again, same result. A guard appeared from inside. "That badge won't work for command building access. Need escort." "I have priority delivery for General Carver." She held up the sealed envelope. "Protocol requires authorized escort for anyone without command-level clearance." The guard was apologetic but firm. "I can call up to her office, please." He lifted his radio, spoke briefly, listened, responded, lowered the radio. "Her adjutant says she's still in conference, can accept delivery at 1700 hours when she's back in office." 1700 was 35 minutes away. Kira stood outside the building, envelope in hand, watching the clock run down on another narrow window. This was the pattern, not dramatic sabotage, just procedural friction applied consistently. Death by 1,000 small delays. She found shade near a bench, sat down, let her head rest against the concrete wall, closed her eyes. The exhaustion she'd been holding back pressed in. 4 hours of sleep across 2 nights, the constant low-level adrenaline of maintaining composure under continuous provocation, the mental load of tracking every detail while appearing oblivious. Patient, not passive. Dad's voice in her memory. There's a difference. At 16:55, she walked back to the command building entrance. A different guard was on duty, same protocol, same radio call. This time, approval came through. "General Carver's adjutant will meet you in the lobby." Inside, the command building was cooler, quieter, carrying the atmosphere of serious work being done by people who didn't need to prove anything. The adjutant, a lieutenant colonel with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd forgotten more about military operations than most people would learn, took the envelope. "You're Voss." "Yes, sir." "Long day." "Yes, sir." "General Carver will review this immediately. Return to temporary quarters. She'll send word when she's ready to brief you on next steps." He paused. "For what it's worth, Pruitt speaks highly of your professionalism under difficult circumstances." It was the first direct acknowledgement she'd received all day that anyone in authority was aware of the pattern. Not sympathy, not intervention, just recognition. Sometimes that's enough. Kira walked back across the compound toward the temporary quarters building. The sun was gone now, sky fading through purple toward black. Lights were coming on across the Blacksite. Security floods, building markers, the soft glow from windows where people were settling into evening routines. She reached her quarters, a single room with metal frame bed, small desk, private bathroom. Dropped her gear bag, sat on the bed. Let herself feel the weight of the day for exactly 2 minutes. Then she stood, showered, changed into clean fatigues, rewrapped the gauze at her wrist with practiced efficiency. From her secured bag, she retrieved a notebook, paper, not digital, because some things shouldn't exist in searchable form. Opened to a page marked with her father's handwriting. Phase 1. Integration. Endure. Document. Wait for the cornered ones to expose themselves. She'd completed Phase 1. The sabotage pattern was clear. Hayes, Garrett, Vance, Torres, all connected by nervous behavior around security protocols, overlapping duty schedules during suspicious system modifications, coordinated efforts to discredit her specifically. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow. But tonight, she needed to prepare for what came next. Her tablet chimed. Message from General Carver's office. Report to my office 0600 tomorrow. Temporary Tier 1 access approved effective immediately. We need to talk about what happened today and what happens next. Kira set down the tablet, pulled out her challenge coin, ran her thumb over the worn dragon head, thought about her father's final message, recorded 2 days before Operation Dragonfall, stored in a secure file she'd only been allowed to access on her 18th birthday. If you're hearing this, I didn't come home. The mission was compromised. Someone on our side sold us. I don't know who, but I know how to find out. Put pressure on the system. Watch who tries too hard to keep things hidden. They'll show themselves. Be patient, be smart, be better than they expect. And when the moment comes, don't hesitate. She'd been patient for 15 years, smart enough to get assigned here, better than anyone expected. Now the pressure was building. Tomorrow, she'd learn who'd been trying hardest to keep her away from Tier 1 systems. Learn why her biometric enrollment had been sabotaged. Learn what Hayes and Garrett were so afraid she might discover. And when the moment came, when the cornered ones made their final move, she wouldn't hesitate. Kira lay back on the bed, coin in hand, and let her eyes close. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Combat breathing, the kind that keeps you steady when you're hunting predators who think they're safe. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight, she'd rest. Outside her window, the Blacksite settled into night watch. Security lights cast long shadows. Guards walked their routes. Somewhere in the operations building, someone was deleting logs, modifying records, trying to cover tracks. And in the medical building, an old scanner held data that would change everything if it survived until morning. The coin warmed in her palm. Dragon Division. Dragonfall Continuum. Air 01. 15 years of waiting. 1 day closer to justice. She slept like a soldier, light enough to wake at any sound, deep enough to recover, dreaming of dragons and the men who feared them. 0600 found Kira standing outside General Carver's office while the compound transitioned from night watch to day operations. The door opened before she could knock. A lieutenant colonel, the same adjutant from yesterday, gestured her inside without preamble. General Rita Carver sat behind a desk that had seen decades of service, surface marked with coffee rings, and the kind of wear that comes from actual work rather than ceremonial display. She was 54, steel gray hair in a tight bun, eyes that assessed without judgment. On her screen, Kira's biometric data from the medical building scanner glowed in columns of green text. Sit. Carver didn't look up from the screen. Kira sat. Silence stretched for 30 seconds while the general scrolled through data, cross-referenced something, made a note. Finally, she looked up. Someone sabotaged your primary enrollment using cloned credentials. Someone else provided you access to backup equipment. And now you're here with temporary clearance that should have taken a week to process. She leaned back. Want to explain why this Blacksite suddenly resembles a battlefield instead of a secure facility? No, ma'am. The truth was simpler than explanation. Carver's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Captain Garrett filed a report claiming you demonstrated unauthorized knowledge of classified systems. Colonel Hayes countered that you simply showed competence he didn't expect. Tech Sergeant Lee submitted maintenance logs showing 6 months of unauthorized modifications to security infrastructure. She tapped her desk. 3 different narratives, all pointing at internal problems I'm now required to investigate. Understood, ma'am. Your temporary clearance expires at 1800 today unless we complete proper enrollment. Carver pulled up a schedule. The primary biometric station has been forensically secured. Tech team needs 8 hours to verify system integrity before it's operational again. She paused. Which means we use the backup system and document everything 6 ways to Sunday, or you go home without access and we start over next month. I'd prefer to complete the mission, ma'am. Mission. Carver repeated the word with emphasis. You're here for a systems audit. Captain Garrett seems to think you're here for something else entirely. He's not wrong, is he? The question hung between them like a tripwire. Answer wrong, and the next 15 years of preparation collapsed. Answer right, and the general would either become an ally or an obstacle. Kira met her eyes. I'm here to find out why my father died. Carver's expression didn't change. General Hector Torres, Dragon Division, Operation Dragonfall. She pulled up a file, heavily redacted, most lines blacked out. Killed in action 15 years ago during a classified operation that went wrong in ways the official report doesn't adequately explain. She turned the screen so Kira could see. You think someone on this base was involved? I think someone on this base sold information that compromised the operation. I think that same person has spent 15 years covering their tracks, and I think they panicked when they saw my name on the assignment roster. Hence the sabotage. Yes, ma'am. Carver closed the file. If you're right, this gets complicated fast. If you're wrong, you've disrupted a secure facility based on personal vendetta. She stood, walked to the window overlooking the compound. Either way, we complete your enrollment properly. Either way, you conduct your audit. And either way, I'll be watching to see what surfaces. Understood, ma'am. Report to the operations building at 1400. We're using the backup scanner with full documentation and multiple witnesses. Bring whatever you need to prove you're authorized for Tier 1 access. Carver turned from the window. And Lieutenant, if someone on my base betrayed Dragon Division, I want them found. But I want it done right. Legal, documented, no vigilante justice. Are we clear? Crystal, ma'am. Dismissed, Kira returned to her quarters. She had 8 hours before the enrollment window. 8 hours to prepare for what would happen when her full tattoo became visible under official observation. 8 hours to ensure the evidence survived whatever came next. She spent 2 hours reviewing classified files on her secured tablet, information General Carver had quietly uploaded to her temporary access last night. Operation Dragonfall mission parameters, personnel rosters, communication logs from the days leading up to the ambush. Everything pointed toward an intelligence leak, but nothing identified the source. At 0900, she walked to the motor pool. Tech Sergeant Lee was there, running diagnostics on a communications array. He saw her approach, finished his sequence, turned. Need something? The backup scanner data you helped process yesterday. Where's it stored? Medical building server, isolated network. Why? Because if someone sabotaged the primary system, they might try the backup next. Lee's jaw tightened. You think they'd risk accessing medical servers? That's a court-martial offense. So is selling classified intelligence to private contractors. Hasn't stopped them yet. He pulled out his tablet, ran a query, his expression shifted. There's a remote access request logged at 0200 this morning, flagged as routine maintenance, but the access point was... He highlighted the entry. Terminal 7, East Barracks, same terminal used to sabotage the primary scanner. Can you secure the backup data? Already did. Moved it to a read-only partition after the general approved your clearance. Whoever tries to access it now will trigger alarms. Lee pocketed his tablet. But they don't know that yet. Kira nodded. Keep monitoring. Let me know if anyone tries. The morning crawled toward afternoon. She completed paperwork in the temporary quarters, documenting yesterday's events with timestamps and witness names. Built a timeline of sabotage attempts cross-referenced against duty schedules. The pattern became clearer with each entry. Hayes, Garrett, and Vance all had overlapping access windows during suspicious system modifications. Torres provided social cover, spreading misinformation that made questioning official narratives look paranoid. At 13:30, she changed into fresh fatigues. Checked her appearance in the mirror. Regulation everything. No visible irregularities. The tattoo remained hidden under her uniform. For now. At 13:55, she walked to the operations building. A crowd had already gathered. Not formation official, but enough personnel that word had clearly spread something significant was happening. Pruitt stood near the entrance. Lee waited by the door to the biometric room. General Carver arrived at 13:58 with her adjutant and 2 military police officers. This is documented enrollment, Carver announced to the assembled personnel. Multiple witnesses, full chain of custody. Anyone interferes with this process answers to me directly. She looked at Hayes, who'd just arrived from the direction of his quarters. That includes senior officers. Clear? Clear, ma'am. Hayes's voice was steady, but sweat showed at his temples despite the air conditioning. Inside the biometric room, the backup scanner had been moved from medical and reinstalled with equipment that looked newer than the building it occupied. 2 cameras mounted on tripods covered different angles. Lee sat at the workstation, hands ready on the keyboard. "Standard enrollment sequence," Carver said. "Lieutenant Voss, approach the scanner." Kira moved into position. Around the room, 15 people watched. Carver, her adjutant, 2 MPs, Pruitt, Hayes, Garrett, Vance, Torres, Lee, and half a dozen others whose names she'd learned over the past 30 hours. Right hand. Lee activated the fingerprint scanner. She placed her palm flat. Green light swept across her skin. Confirmation tone. Left hand, same process, same confirmation. Retinal scan. She leaned into the optical reader. Brief flash. Beep. Voice authentication. Read the passphrase exactly as displayed. The screen showed a different sequence than yesterday. Longer, more complex. She read it clearly. The system processed. Accepted. Full body scan. Lee gestured to the standing scanner. Arms out. Hold position. She stepped inside the frame. Extended her arms. The scanner powered up with a hum that vibrated through the floor. Lights began their sweep. Feet, ankles, calves, knees, thighs, hips, torso, chest, shoulders. The scanner reached her neck, kept climbing, detected the edge of her tattoo where collar met skin. No error message. The system continued scanning, reached her jawline, completed the sequence. Confirmation tone. Enrollment complete, processing biometric profile. Lee's screen filled with data. Fingerprints mapped, retinal pattern stored, voice signature filed, body scan rendering in 3 dimensions. The tattoo showed clearly in the imaging. A dragon spanning from neck to mid-back. Scales detailed enough to be individually visible on the high-resolution scan. Garrett stepped closer to Lee's workstation. Saw the scan. His face went pale. "Is that—" "Stand back, Captain." Carver moved between him and the screen. "This is official enrollment. Observations can wait until completion." But Garrett had already seen enough. He backed toward the door, hand moving toward his phone. Carver noticed. "MPs, no one leaves this room until enrollment is certified and filed." The 2 military police moved to block the exit. Garrett froze. Hayes, standing near the opposite wall, had gone completely still. The kind of motionless that comes from someone trying very hard not to attract attention. Lee completed the data processing. Enrollment successful. Biometric profile filed under Lieutenant Kira Voss. Tier 1 authorization confirmed. Access granted effective immediately. He looked at Carver. "Ready for certification signature, ma'am. Show me the full scan first." Lee pulled up the 3-dimensional rendering, rotated it on screen so the tattoo was fully visible. The dragon's head started at the base of her skull, serpentine neck flowing down her spine, wings spread across shoulder blades, tail wrapping around her right ribs. In the high-resolution scan, individual scales showed texture, shading, depth, and woven through the scales, barely visible unless you knew to look, patterns that resembled text characters. Pruitt had moved closer. He stared at the screen, lips moving silently, then louder. "That's Dragon Division mark." His voice carried across the room. "I've seen that exact pattern. Once. On General Torres. After his team completed a Level 5 operation." The room went silent. "Dragon Division doesn't exist," Garrett said. His voice cracked slightly. "That's classified mythology. Disinformation." "Is it?" Carver turned to face him. "Because Sergeant Major Pruitt seems quite certain, and he served under General Torres before Dragon Division was officially dissolved." She looked at Kira. "Care to clarify?" This was the moment. Reveal now under controlled conditions, or let the secret remain buried and lose any tactical advantage. Kira met Carver's eyes, made her choice. "Dragon Division existed. My father created it for operations too sensitive for standard command structure. When Operation Dragonfall was compromised, 8 operators died. The division was dissolved." She pulled her challenge coin from her pocket, placed it on Lee's workstation beside the keyboard. But the mission didn't end. It went dormant, waiting for the right operator to continue the investigation. Pruitt picked up the coin. His hands shook slightly as he turned it over. Air 01, Dragonfall Continuum. He looked at Kira with an expression somewhere between awe and grief. Your father trained you. From 12 years old. Air protocol. If he died on mission, I'd be prepared to complete it. Hayes moved toward the door. The MPs blocked him. I need to make a call. No one makes calls until this is resolved, Carver said. Her voice had dropped into command mode. Lieutenant Voss, are you saying your father was murdered and you're here investigating? I'm saying Operation Dragonfall was compromised by someone who sold intelligence to private contractors. I'm saying that same person has been covering their tracks for 15 years, and I'm saying they panicked when they saw my assignment orders because they knew what my presence meant. Garrett's phone buzzed. He pulled it out despite the MPs moving closer. Read the screen. His face went from pale to gray. This is insane. You can't just accuse... I haven't accused anyone. Kira's voice stayed level. Yet. But someone sabotaged my primary enrollment. Someone cloned Colonel Hayes's credentials to modify security systems. Someone's been very interested in keeping me away from Tier 1 access. She looked directly at Hayes. Someone who knows exactly what I'd find if I gained access to archived communication logs from Operation Dragonfall. Hayes straightened. I was cleared in the investigation. Every officer on this base was interviewed. Nothing tied me to the leak. Because you weren't on this base during Dragonfall. Kira pulled out her tablet, displayed a personnel roster from 15 years ago. You were attached to Strategic Command, processing communication requests for Black operations, including Dragon Division. She swiped to another document. You approved the information sharing agreement with Thorn Industries 3 weeks before Dragonfall, the agreement that gave them access to tactical communication parameters. That was legitimate contract work, approved by officers who didn't know Thorn Industries was a shell company funneling intelligence to competitors. Kira pulled up another file. This is the money trail. Thorn Industries to offshore accounts to personal holdings to... She turned the tablet so everyone could see. An account opened in your name 6 weeks after Operation Dragonfall. The silence in the room was absolute. Hayes' face hardened. You can't prove those deposits connect to classified work. Plenty of officers have investments. You're right. I cannot prove it. Yet. Kira pocketed her tablet. But the archived server logs can. The ones stored on the Tier 1 system I now have access to. The ones showing exactly which intelligence requests you processed, which contractors you shared them with, and what you were paid in return. Hayes lunged toward her. Not attack. Desperation. A man whose carefully constructed defenses had just collapsed. Vance caught him, held him back. Colonel, don't! But Hayes twisted free, grabbed at Kira's wrist, trying to seize her tablet, her credentials, something. She reacted on pure muscle memory, wrist lock technique, minimal force, just enough to break his grip and redirect his momentum. Off-screen movement, freeze frame instant, his hand slipped from her wrist, her jacket pulled sideways from the motion, the tattoo emerged into full visibility. Not just the edge, not just a suggestion, the entire dragon from neck to ribs, scales catching the fluorescent light, detail impossible to dismiss as casual artwork. The pattern was unmistakable, military-grade artistry, the kind that costs thousands and requires security clearance to obtain because the ink composition itself contains verification markers. 15 people gasped simultaneously. The sound echoed in the confined space. Vance released Hayes, stepping back. Holy cow! Torres, standing near the wall, raised her phone to take a photo. The MPs confiscated it before her finger reached the screen. She didn't resist, just stared at the tattoo with an expression of dawning comprehension. Garrett had gone completely still. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not possible. Dragon Division was dissolved. The tattoos were classified. No one outside the original operators... Air Protocol provided exceptions, Pruitt said quietly. If an operator died on mission and had designated a successor, that successor received full identification marks after completing advanced training. He stepped closer to Kira, studied the pattern across her shoulders. Every scale matches General Torres's original mark. I saw his once, in a secure briefing after he pulled our team out of a collapsed operation. He showed us to explain why we could trust him with information we'd never shared before. His voice thickened. He said that tattoo meant he'd sacrifice anything to complete the mission, including his life. He did. Kira adjusted her jacket, but didn't cover the tattoo. Let it stay visible. Operation Dragonfall took his life, but it didn't end the mission. It passed to me. Carver moved to Lee's workstation, pulled up archived files, comparing the scan of Kira's tattoo to photos stored in classified records. After 30 seconds, she found what she needed. A photograph from 12 years ago showing General Torres during a field training exercise, shirt removed, full dragon tattoo visible across his back. She overlaid the images, rotated them to matching angles. The patterns aligned with 97% accuracy, the 3% variance accounted for by differences in body structure and artistic adaptation. It's authentic. Carver's voice carried total certainty. This is verified Dragon Division identification. She turned to face Hayes, which means Lieutenant Voss has authority that supersedes everyone in this room except me, including you, Colonel. Hayes sagged against the wall. It was supposed to be routine contract work, just communication parameters, nothing operational. Thorn Industries said they needed it for security coordination. I didn't know they'd use it to... He stopped, seemed to realize he was confessing. To set up an ambush that killed 8 operators. Kira's voice was ice. You sold tactical communication frequencies, encryption protocols, and operational schedules to a shell company that funneled them to private military contractors who wanted Dragon Division eliminated because we'd discovered their involvement in illegal arms trafficking. She pulled her tablet back out. I have the email chain. Thorn Industries to Blackwater subsidiaries, Blackwater to overseas clients, clients to the ambush site where my father died. Justice isn't loud. Share this if you believe patience has teeth. And don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe right now. Hayes shook his head. I was told it was legitimate. I followed proper authorization procedures. If there was deception, it came from above my level. Then you'll have no problem explaining that under official investigation. Carver nodded to the MPs. Colonel Hayes, you're detained pending court-martial proceedings. Charges include unauthorized disclosure of classified information, conspiracy to commit espionage, and accessory to the deaths of military personnel. She looked at Garrett and Vance. You two are suspended pending determination of your involvement. If you sabotaged Lieutenant Voss's enrollment or participated in covering Colonel Hayes' activities, you'll face additional charges. Garrett found his voice. We didn't know about Dragonfall. We just followed Hayes' orders when he said the contractor needed to be delayed. That's still obstruction. You'll give full statements to the investigators. Carver turned to Torres. You spread false information about Lieutenant Voss and took unauthorized photos. Minor compared to the rest, but it adds up. You're reassigned to administrative duty until this is resolved. The MPs moved Hayes toward the door. He looked back at Kira, searching for something. Forgiveness, understanding, justification. She met his eyes with the same neutral expression she'd maintained for 30 hours of provocation. Your father was a good officer, Hayes said. I never wanted him dead, I just wanted money. Kira finished the sentence. You wanted money more than you wanted integrity. That's why 8 people died. That's why families got folded flags instead of living parents. That's why I spent 15 years training for this moment. She pulled out her challenge coin, held it up so he could see the dragon head worn smooth by her father's thumb. He knew someone betrayed him. His last message told me exactly how to find you. Wait for the person who tries hardest to keep me away from the truth. You did that perfectly. Hayes said nothing else. The MPs escorted him out. The door closed behind them with a finality that sounded like justice. Carver addressed the remaining personnel. This facility is now under investigative lockdown. No one discusses what happened here. No communications leave this base without my approval. Lieutenant Voss has full authority to conduct her audit and continue her investigation with complete access to all systems. She looked at Kira. What do you need? Access to the secure server room. The archived logs from Operation Dragonfall are stored there. I need to extract them before anyone attempts to delete evidence. How long? 30 minutes, maybe less. You have 20. After that, the investigative team arrives and everything goes into official custody. Carver pulled out her phone. I'm calling this in now. You get your evidence first, but then you hand it over and let the system work. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Lee stood. I'll escort her. The logs are stored on a drive that requires genetic key authentication plus manual cipher entry. If she really has General Torres's genetic markers, she should be able to unlock it. The server room was 3 floors down, behind 2 security checkpoints and a vault door that required Carver's personal authorization. Inside, rows of equipment hummed in climate-controlled darkness, maintaining temperatures optimal for data preservation. Lee navigated to a specific rack, pulled out a drawer containing a hard drive encased in tamper-evident seals. This is it. Genetic authentication first. He activated the scanner. Kira placed her hand on the reader. The system sampled, analyzed, compared against stored markers. 10 seconds, 15, 20, green light. Genetic match confirmed. Torres family line verified. Now the cipher. Lee pulled up a screen showing the tattoo pattern from her enrollment scan. The encryption key is woven into your tattoo. Each scale contains a hexadecimal character. You need to identify the sequence in the correct order. Kira studied the pattern, saw what her father had designed, a map hidden in plain sight. The scales weren't random. They followed the dragon's anatomy in a sequence that corresponded to classical mythology. She traced the pattern with her finger, calling out characters. Delta, 7, Alpha, 9, Echo, 2, Charlie, 5. 16 characters. The drive's lock mechanism clicked. Magnetic seals released. The case opened, revealing storage media that hadn't been accessed in 15 years. Lee connected it to his laptop. Files began populating on screen, communication logs, mission reports, intelligence summaries, email chains. Everything related to Operation Dragonfall preserved exactly as it existed the day General Torres died. Kira opened the communication request file. Found the entry showing Hayes' approval of the information sharing agreement with Thorn Industries. Read the justification text. Strategic partnership to enhance contractor security coordination in overlapping operational theaters. Opened the next file. Email from Thorn Industries to Hayes, confirming receipt of Dragon Division communication parameters per our agreement. Payment processing as discussed. Additional intelligence requests to follow. Next file. Bank records showing wire transfer from offshore account to Hayes' investment portfolio. Amount, $2.3 million. Date, 6 weeks after Operation Dragonfall. Next file. After action report from the ambush site. Dragon Division team engaged by hostile forces demonstrating advanced knowledge of communication frequencies, encryption protocols, and operational schedules. All indicators suggest intelligence compromise at source level. Next file. Hayes' statement to investigators. I processed routine contractor coordination requests per standard authorization procedures. Any intelligence compromise must have occurred downstream of my involvement. The files together told a complete story. Hayes sold access. Thorn Industries weaponized it. 8 operators died. Hayes collected payment and hid behind bureaucratic language that technically complied with procedures while fundamentally betraying the mission. Copy everything, Kira said. 3 separate drives, chain of custody documentation, time-stamped verification. Lee worked quickly, experienced hands moving through preservation protocols. This is exactly the evidence the original investigators needed but couldn't access because it required genetic authentication no one could provide after General Torres died. My father knew what would happen if he died before completing the investigation. That's why he designed the air protocol. That's why he trained me. Kira watched files copy to secured drives. He made me his backup plan. 15 minutes later, they returned to the operations building with 3 sealed evidence drives. Carver took possession, signed chain of custody documents, handed 1 drive to her adjutant. This goes to the Judge Advocate General immediately. Priority courier, no delays. The investigative team arrived at 1600 hours. Military police, JAG officers, counterintelligence specialists. They swept through the facility with methodical efficiency, securing systems, interviewing personnel, building the official case that would eventually put Hayes in front of a court-martial board. Kira gave her statement over 4 hours, walking investigators through 15 years of preparation, 30 hours of enduring sabotage, and the final 20 minutes that produced irrefutable evidence. They copied her files, verified her credentials, confirmed her authority under air protocol provisions they'd never encountered in active cases. At 2000 hours, General Carver found her in the temporary quarters. The investigators have everything they need for charges. Hayes will face court-martial within 90 days. Garrett and Vance are suspended pending determination of their knowledge and intent. Torres is reassigned. She sat in the desk chair. Your part in this is officially complete. Is it? Kira pulled out the envelope Pruitt had given her yesterday, the one containing her father's handwritten note. 2 more dragons sleep. Wake them. Carver took the envelope, read the note. Her expression shifted. There were 3 Blacksites involved in Dragon Division operations. This was one. You think the other 2 have similar problems? I think my father suspected a network, not an individual. I think Hayes was just the one he'd identified before he died. And I think if we dig into the other sites, we'll find more compromised officers who've spent 15 years feeling safe. That's a significant investigation, multi-site, extended timeline. You'd need official authorization and full operational support. I know. Carver handed back the envelope. General Torres left instructions. You're executing them. I can facilitate that. She stood. Give me 72 hours to coordinate with command. Then you'll have orders for the next site and whatever resources you need. After she left, Kira opened her secured tablet, pulled up personnel files for the second Blacksite, started building profiles, identifying patterns, looking for officers whose behavior matched what Hayes had shown. Nervousness around security protocols, unexplained wealth, career paths that intersected with Dragon Division operations at suspicious times. Her tablet chimed. Message from Tech Sergeant Lee. Thought you should know. Someone tried to access the backup biometric data at 2100 hours from Terminal 7. Triggered the alarm exactly like you predicted. MPs secured the terminal. Found evidence of additional unauthorized access attempts going back 6 months. You were right about the network. She typed back. Keep monitoring. If they had someone here, they'll have people at the other sites. His response came quickly. Already coordinating with counterparts at Blacksite 2 and 3. We're comparing access logs looking for patterns. We'll send you analysis tomorrow. Kira set down the tablet, walked to the window. Outside, the compound had settled into evening routine. Guards walking perimeters, lights glowing in buildings, the quiet rhythm of a secure facility going about its business. But underneath that surface calm, investigations were spreading like cracks through ice. Soon the whole rotten structure would collapse. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Justice takes time. Don't rush it. Build the case, document everything, then strike when they can't hide anymore. 15 years of patience. 1 Blacksite down, 2 more to go. She touched the challenge coin in her pocket, felt its familiar weight. Tomorrow she'd start building the next case. Tonight she'd rest knowing her father's legacy was finally moving forward. The tattoo across her back carried new meaning now. Not just identification, not just heritage. It was a warning to everyone who'd betrayed Dragon Division. The mission didn't die with General Torres. It evolved, and it was coming for them all. Somewhere in Blacksite 2, an officer was probably sleeping peacefully, confident their secrets were safe. They'd wake up soon enough. Wake up to find that dragons don't stay buried forever. They wake up hungry and patient and absolutely inevitable. Kira smiled, just slightly, the kind of expression her father used to wear when a complicated plan finally clicked into place. 2 more dragons sleep, she whispered to her reflection. Time to wake them up. Outside her window, stars emerged as darkness deepened. The same stars that had watched her father die. The same stars that would watch her complete his mission. Dragon Division wasn't mythology. It was legacy. And legacy, like justice, doesn't forget. It just waits for the right moment to remind everyone why some things should never be betrayed. She pulled out her notebook, opened to a fresh page, wrote 3 words. Blacksite 2. Preparation begins. Then she closed the book, turned off the light, and let exhaustion finally claim her. The deep sleep of someone who'd carried weight for 15 years and finally set down the first piece. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new betrayals to uncover, new officers who thought they were safe. But tonight, 1 dragon had awakened, and the others would follow. Patient, hungry, inevitable, justice in motion.